for having me. Definitely really happy to see everyone here, and I want to thank Juliet and Cherry on Tech for having me, because it's been a while. It's been a while since we've been able to be in the same virtual room together. So I appreciate, and yeah. So I'll get started here. Yeah, so this talk is going to be about burnout in tech for marginalized genders, or really anyone on the fringe who isn't cis het male in tech. So feel free to comment in the chat and I will answer the questions. Since we have a lot of time, we could probably answer them as we go, but for up until, actually, no, I'll answer them at the end. How about we do that, just to wait on the chaos, just in case. But yeah, so burnout in tech. As Juliet said, I'm Mo. I use they or any pronouns, really, at this point. I'm gender fluid. I'm coming at you from so-called Hamilton, occupying the traditional territories of the Erie, Neutral, Huron-Wendat, Haudenosaunee, and Mississaugas. I would encourage everyone to head on over to nativeland.ca to check out which territories you're located on and which nations you should support, as well as building relationships with or giving money or land back. My experience in tech starts probably around when I was in high school, but that was more on the digital media side of things. If you don't count all of the service industry jobs where I had to navigate really awful tech, I started digital freelance design in 2017. And so I've been doing anything related to interpreting things through digital platforms for the last 7 years. And specifically for the last 5 years, I've been working in the public and private sectors, doing service and digital product design, as well as research. So that's a little bit about me and my relationship to tech. For this talk, the main takeaways I want for you are to understand that burnout is systemic and it's also individual, why it's important to identify it, how to mitigate it, and to know you aren't alone. As Juliet said, you've already done some of the burnout understandings and everything before, but we'll cover it again just as a little refresher. And also I want to talk about it today specifically because it's important, because more and more it's more evident that corporations or CEOs and managers think that they have power over us, when really, when workers unite, we are knowledgeable and we create a community of power and care. So yeah, that's important. So what to expect from this talk? I just gave my little introduction. We'll now move into an understanding of burnout, the definitions and symptoms, the unique pressures for marginalization, for folks who experience marginalization, intersectionality. We'll break for a little group reflection questions where we can kind of reflect internally for ourselves, and if we want to share it out, we can. And then we'll talk about strategies to mitigate it, and then question and answer after that. All right, so how I experienced the tech industry. I showed up, I caused a scene, and I left early. And I would argue it's due to burnout. That's why I left early. And so just to level set, I hope that the following information helps you in ways that I needed before I knew what was happening. And also to continue to do your own research, because this is just the tip of the iceberg, and this is just from the way I interpreted everything that I learned as well as experienced. So let's jump on over to the Mentimeter. If you want to scan this with your phone, if you have a phone close to you, if there's anyone that doesn't have a phone, let me see, can I click on this? No, I have to exit it first. Does anyone not have a phone and want to use it from the desktop? I think we're good, if not. Okay, cool. So once we're in there, when you think of burnout, what words come to mind? Nice, yeah. All very tiredness, overworked, stressed, exhaustion. lack of response, apathy, yeah. Yep. Sacrifice, Pandora's box, that's a good one. Great. Okay, now I'm gonna go to the next question. How would you define burnout for yourself and in general? After a point, you can't keep up. Yeah. Working to the point of no energy or motivation. It's not defined in time, but placing an effort and not seeing a gratifying return for sure, such as feeling monetary or support. Great. I'll keep them coming in. I'll have them collected, but we'll go to the next one. Have you ever experienced burnout? Got some somewhats, and yes. Oh, split down the middle. We have no no's though. Double negative. So that's interesting. I don't know if you can go through life without experiencing burnout, really, which is kind of sad. But truly, that's kind of the feeling. Okay, let's choose the next one. Do you feel comfortable talking about burnout and mental health with your coworkers, your family, supervisors, and friends? I'm really a fan of the animations in Mentimeter. It really
I was going to say that. This is so. I love it.
Yeah.
Satisfying.
Yeah.
Very cool. Ooh, I wonder which one's gonna come out on top. Looks like so far, I prefer not to discuss it at all. Very interesting. Okay. I have to dig into why later. Just kidding. Only if you want to. The next one. What do you think the cause of burnout is? Sounds a trick question. It is all of them. Sorry, but it is. Yeah, so I will take screenshots and put them at the end of the presentation for folks because I'll share the presentation afterwards. But yeah, so let's hop back into the presentation. Thanks for everyone for participating. That was fun. So it segues really nicely into, just the basic definition that the World Health Organization defines it as. So burnout is a state of emotional, oh wait, let me pull up my notes. Sorry. Burnout is a state of emotional, physical, and mental exhaustion caused by excessive, prolonged stress. So pretty much everyone said that in any of the questions. Y'all got it. And it occurs when you feel overwhelmed, emotionally drained, or unable to meet constant demands. Some of the key symptoms, not all of them, this is just the main ones. Feeling of energy depletion, increased mental distance from one's job, reduced personal efficacy or professional efficacy, and overall dread and anxiety around life. So how does that kind of reflect to marginalized genders? And when I say marginalized genders, I mean everyone who isn't like a cis heterosexual male, or male defined as birth, at birth. So here we have only 5 that are listed here. There are many more, but I'll go into the first couple and then we can go to the next page. So pressures that marginalized genders face, proving one's worth in a cis male-dominated field. Marginalized genders often face significant underrepresentation, as we know, which can lead to feelings of isolation and alienation, especially in the workplace. The lack of visibility can hinder our sense of belonging and community, which is crucial for professional and personal support. Then there's the impact of microaggressions. So discrimination can take many forms. It can be overt and it can also be subtle, microaggressions. And this can degrade the work environment and significantly impact mental health, which also contributes to stress and burnout. Then there's the often heightened scrutiny on performance or barriers to career advancement. There's this is also frequently experienced when you're trying to just do your regular job in your roles in tech, as well as inadequate workplace and gender affirmation policies. So for transgender individuals, the process of transitioning can introduce additional challenges, such as navigating coming out to colleagues, dealing with name or pronoun changes professionally. I personally had to experience this, and managing the personal aspects around transition alongside their career. So this goes kind of, it goes hand in hand. It is this, intersectionality and burnout. Intersectionality is a framework that was developed by Kimberly Crenshaw to understand how various forms of inequality and discrimination interact between in the lives of individuals, and the way that it interacts with burnout. We'll get into that, but it suggests that the social identities such as race, gender, class, sexuality, disability, they don't just exist independently of one another, but rather they interconnect, and they create complex systems of oppression and privilege. So intersectionality highlights the fact that a person can be privileged in some ways and also simultaneously oppressed in others, and that their experiences are shaped by that combination of factors, not just a single aspect of their identity. So the ways that this show up in the intersectional factors that influence burnout can be colonial legacies and Indigenous struggles. So for Indigenous populations, the ongoing effects of colonialism, like displacement, loss of cultural heritage, systemic inequalities, contribute to the unique form of stress. This stress is compounded by the need to navigate and assert identity within spaces that often disregard or devalue cultures and histories, leading to profound mental and emotional fatigue, amongst many other things. Another thing is racism and racial trauma. For individuals from racialized communities, daily encounters with racial discrimination or just microaggressions contribute to chronic stress. This ongoing stress can lead to a state of hypervigilance, emotional exhaustion, key components of burnout, as I'm sure many folks are aware of. The mental load of navigating a predominantly white workspace, for example, can add an extra layer of stress that white counterparts do not experience. Patriarchy and gender roles, as well as classism and economic pressure. For patriarchal structures, traditional gender roles often place domestic and caregiving responsibilities on the marginalized genders, which includes emotional labor, and it goes unrecognized and unsupported in the workplace. And some folks who are lower income often work multiple jobs, longer hours, and have fewer resources, whether that be spoons or just mental capacities to do self-care or mental health support, due to the lack of access to different economic stability measures. So how does all this affect your body and your mind? Well, there are many, many ways that this can happen, and ways it can show up, but physical symptoms like headaches, fatigue, weakened immune response, and other health problems can show up. Over time, the body's stress response can seem very overreacted or overacted. And it leads to long-term health issues like hypertension or heart disease. Psychologically, mentally and emotionally, it can manifest in anxiety and depression. And this can show from internalization of these negative messages or stereotypes. And then also the chronic stress and burnout can impair our cognitive functions, such as memory, attention, and decision-making. So that's a lot. How do I relate to this? One of the many examples that I have is when I worked for the government, I was part of the second team in that department to use agile methods. So it was already a very new idea within the government. This team was tasked with taking paper citizenship immigration processes into digital spaces and online forums, navigating the bureaucratic slowness of the government, but also trying to move with the speed of agile development was really challenging organizationally. But as an individual, I have a few examples of the way that intersectionality and burnout show up in this experience. So when I onboarded onto the team, there were no options for me to include my pronouns. I was the first trans, gender fluid them to join the team. All of the forms to get onboarded onto the team ask for your gender assignment at birth and your sex. As a smaller win, because changing the forms for a government HR practice takes forever, I suggested that we make the whole team add pronouns to our virtual whiteboard, introducing people to the teams. That's where everyone goes whenever someone joins. It made it really awkward because I essentially had to come out again to my team. And after coming out, many folks just didn't know grammatically how to use they, them, which fair if it's the first time you're encountering something like that, but also, Google exists. In a sentence, so a lot of the managers asked their higher ups for me to do a presentation, me specifically. And this was a lot to put on me to teach a new idea to the team. And then also as a trans person, I was like, why do I have to do this? What if they don't accept me? What if it gets weird? What if someone says something messed up? Like, I don't want to have to navigate that. Like, I'm gonna have to quit. Like, I don't want to have to deal with that. And then I also thought, like, no one else is going to do it justice. If no one knows how to use they, them in a sentence, they're not going to do it justice teaching the whole team on that. So it kind of put me in a weird position. It was a really double-edged sword. And on top of all that, I still needed to complete all my assigned work. I still needed to be like an upstanding employee with all of my teammates and not be difficult to work with. And then it was also the beginning of the pandemic. Sorry. And so it's really the perfect storm for burnout in that situation. And I definitely did burn out. But thankfully, when I did give the presentation, my teammates weren't assholes, thank goodness. And when I gave the presentation, the director saw me as like a leader, which is later on how I got promoted to a team lead, but that's a whole other story I don't really have time to get into at the moment. I didn't really want to be a leader at that point. Like, I just wanted to do my job, and hopefully for the next people that come in, that whether they are queer or trans, they don't experience as much friction as I did. And I also tried to talk to the HR folks to try and get this form changed. And I think when I left, I don't know, Juliet might know, I think it was still in the works when I left. So I don't know, Juliet, can you confirm or deny?
No idea.
Okay, well, I wouldn't be surprised. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if it was still in the works, which is absolutely tragic, but it is so, like, that's literally the government. Yeah, so that's my story. That's one of my stories at the very beginning of working in tech in the public sector. So now that I've kind of shared my own experience, I would love if we could come together or, separately in our own little minds and kind of like, come down and ground ourselves in sharing our own personal experiences. Think about a time when you felt overwhelmed or unsupported at work due to one or more aspects of your identity. What changes could have been made in your workplace to better support you? So you can think and reflect by yourself and write it in your own journal or wherever you want to write it, or you can also share it in the chat. Do not feel obligated. That's completely fine. You don't have to share it with everyone. But I do think the next questions could benefit from us kind of brainstorming a little bit together. So strategies for resilience. What strategies have you found effective in managing stress related to work or the systems that affect us? Share any tips personal tips or organizational supports that might have helped. And then also areas for improvement. So brainstorm ideas on how your current workplace can improve support for employees experiencing burnout. So we can think of, and if you're not in a workplace at the moment, whether that could also be in your own home, it could be whether you've like volunteered with something or even just in a previous job. It doesn't have to specifically be in tech because that knowledge is still transferable and is still valuable. So yeah, we'll give it a little bit of time. I don't know if we want it to be silent so we can think, or if we want to put on a little music or what. Cool. I'm gonna jump back into the presentation. In the chat. Thank you everyone for adding and sharing. I appreciate all your thoughts and insights. I'll also share some strategies that have also been echoed in the room, which is awesome to know that everyone's kind of on the same wavelength. Strategies to mitigate burnout that I've used and that I've seen used in some great examples in previous places of burnout. Lol. Are organizational strategies. You can do anti-oppression trainings, hiring and paying folks with lived experience to deliver these trainings on any of the topics that the employees want or need in relation to anything that might be contributing to burnout, both systemic and individual. Increasing visibility and representation of marginalized genders or any other marginalized folks that aren't the main cishet male white dudes and people. Create a flexible work environment that accommodates the needs of all employees, as well as creating and supporting a bunch of different affinity groups within the company and allowing them to create their own little microcosm communities to be able to support one another. That's just within the organization. Stuff that I've done personally that I find helpful. So finding my community, my allies, whether that's in the workplace or also within my neighborhood, building them up, contributing to the things that they need, and being very reciprocal with energy, supporting one another and participating in them actively. I also like to journal, dance around the house with the headphones on like no one's watching, trying to drink lots of water, going for walks, if in nature, that's better, and making nourishing meals, or making them for myself or for people that I love. Yeah, and then all the other amazing things that y'all stated in the Fig Jam. So some final thoughts and resources. I can share a link to my presentation if you want. I also have the link to CMHA if you're feeling like you need some help immediately. The CMHA, I don't know if everyone here is in Canada, so-called Canada, but there's that. And then I also have a Crip drive for all of the resources that I've used in the past or that have been recommended to me. There's a burnout assessment in here, the professional quality of life scale, and a self-assessment, self-care assessment that you can download and use. There's also a bunch of links to a bunch of different readings and book clubs and stuff like that have helped me understand both the systemic and individual aspects of burnout and all the reasons why the world is burning. Yeah. So if there's any questions or anyone feels called to share more of their personal experiences or any solutions or things that they've tried, I'm happy to chat about that now. But thank you for listening and showing up. I appreciate y'all.